Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way, please. I'm trying to get paid. Not today, not today.
Welcome. We are finally halfway through the season. I guess we're more than halfway through the season and week 8 of college football. Steve, how are you feeling? We've made it through the halfway point.
Yeah, I mean, once again, this is just going way too fast for my liking, but, glad to be a part of this ride, glad to get some great bets in, and just glad for the anarchy of this year. I don't know who's going to win what, and I like it that way. How about you?
Parity. I couldn't agree more. The top doesn't feel so heavy this year, which is really going to be pretty cool. I think coming down the stretch, we're obviously going to get into the power ratings and all of that. But before we jump in, I would like to please ask all of the viewers out there, please consider giving us a like and subscribe. It helps us tremendously. It also helps us get all of the information that we are putting together to you as fast as possible. So please give us a follow. Please give us a like. All right, Steve. So without further ado, let's jump in to the power rating that is now updated through 7 games of data. So that's a healthy amount of play-by-play data. We're coming off some pretty big games, yes, but also I think just big learnings for some of these teams, as some teams take some steps forward, some teams take a step back. Where I want to start here is in the SEC. Traditionally, these are the big dogs. We got Alabama, we got Georgia. In the last 10 years, both of these teams have basically won national championship after national championship. So let's start here with Georgia. Playing in Nashville, Vandy, very ugly win, a win nonetheless. But the thing here I want to talk about is Brock Bowers going down. It looks like he did officially have surgery. Undisclosed amount of time he'll be out. He got this new innovative surgery that a couple of other players have had. He could be out for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks is what I've read. So let's just start there with Georgia. What are you concerned here with that performance at Vandy?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, that is definitely disappointing that they didn't blow them out, especially because we had them at minus 31 and a half. Yeah. So that definitely sucked, right? And on surface, yeah, I mean, you want to see good teams beat up on bad teams, right? You don't want to see these good teams kind of walk in the park and keep these poor teams in check. And that's what the Vandy is. I mean, look at the matchup map. They are literally on the opposite sides of the spectrum here. The reason why I'm not rushing to panic just yet is that, unfortunately, this is what frustrates me about Georgia football, is that they have this terrible tendency to kind of play with their food, but when it's time to show up to the big games, boy, do they show up. And anecdotally, I've been burned on this before in years past. I've seen Georgia, keep close against a bottom feeder team, and I bet the spread against them on the next game against a good team, and they dog wash them. So, I'm not so concerned yet, but it's definitely I'm peaking. Now, Brock Bowers, I mean, he is their leading dude on offense. What's Carson Beck going to do without him? I truly don't know. And so I have a huge question mark going into this week. If they can pull it together and keep, all engines running, cool. But if not, then it may be time to look at those Alabama tickets.
Yeah. And that's a great segue. I mean, I'm with you there, but I do think that that's really concerning injury, because if we just go back a couple of weeks, they only made it out of Auburn alive because of Brock Bowers, right? And you don't have that, go-to out that's become very reliable. What do they do? And of course, Vandy, that game is very interesting. If you actually look at the box score, that was a game that looked close through a lot of explosive plays. So I'm not surprised that the power ratings actually moved Georgia up a bit, just because really they gave up a lot of explosive plays, but an overall play-by-play, they weren't as bad. Okay, but you made a good point here. Alabama, I mean, they barely made it out of their own game alive here. This is a home game with Arkansas. They were, kind of rolling, but then Arkansas came back. So, the question, I mean, I want to get your analysis on Alabama. We've been talking about them, every week, obviously, because this is a team that doesn't look like any other Alabama team I think we've ever seen. But the bigger question I have, and I wanted to get your thoughts, is this Bama team for sure going to lose one more game?
Ooh, that is a great question. I mean, let's pull it up here, right? Because what they have left is Tennessee, LSU, Kentucky, Chattanooga, and Auburn, right? Yep. And so when you look at this, that back-to-back ranked games against Tennessee and LSU, And I gotta give you credit because you're the first ones to call this. I'm kind of on the boat that I think Tennessee they're semi frauds. And so I don't see them losing that game. LSU, again, I think they kind of come in a little overhyped. That defense initially gave me some pause there, but when we look at Auburn out that Iron Bowl is always close. That is always a game
Always.
Auburn gets up for, always. And so I could see them running through, maybe not running through. I can see them beating Tennessee and LSU just to lose to Auburn at the end of the year. So to answer your question, yeah, I think you're kind of right. I definitely could see them winning, or sorry, losing one more game.
Yeah,
But
and don't forget that even if they don't don't lose any of those, probably they got to play Georgia, right, in the SEC championship.
right, yeah,
So
yeah. But again, it comes down to what is a Brock Bauerless Georgia team look like,
correct.
right? And so if they're still in the same stratosphere, then yeah, I'm still rolling with Georgia. But if they look like a middle of the SEC team, I've got some concerns. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do. I do think it's a high probability that Alabama loses again. I mean, to bury the lead here, I agree early in the season, Tennessee, but I think the other team that's regressed way more than I would have forecasted is Bama themselves. So I don't know that this week is a shoo-in that Alabama wins. We're going to talk about the cover here in a second. So then I have to ask the question, okay, if it's not Georgia, it's not Alabama, who am I buying in the SEC? And I can tell you, this is the opposite of Black Friday to me. I want to save my money. I'm not rushing to buy anybody because no one wants to stand out here, and I can't figure it out. You would have said A&M at the beginning of the season. They're not really doing much. They lost their quarterback. Their backup he's doing all right. Mississippi State's kind of struggling. Vandy, I guess the sexy team right now is Mizzou, but we saw what LSU did to a Mizzou team. I just don't think they have the talent yet to play with the big dogs. They can keep a game close. Maybe they can cover a game, but can they truly go and beat Alabama and a Georgia team? I think that's a pretty low probability. So that's the hardest thing for me to answer that question. So if I'm not buying Georgia, I'm not buying Alabama, I don't know who I'm buying.
Sure, right. And to your point, LSU, we just said LSU has to play Bama again, but their schedule is pretty easy. Their next hardest game is going to be Florida, which technically is in the running in terms of SEC East standings, right? And so, I don't know who you can buy. You have a bunch of teams outside of Bama and Georgia who are undefeated, who are one-loss teams in conference play in the SEC, and none of them look like they want it, and that's the scary part to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so I got to come clean here. I don't even know why last week. I mean, we were talking about the ACC, and I'm like, Louisville to win the ACC. I gotta come correct. Why I'm not even giving Florida State the time of day makes zero sense to me in retrospect. So I'm going to pay for my sins here. Florida State, they're definitely going to win the ACC. I mean, it's a high probability in my mind. And even when I went back, I'm like, okay, well, why was I not hype on this team? And then I remember week 1, this team beat LSU. Like this team, they basically struggled against Boston College, and then I've sold them ever since, and that makes zero sense. I'm not sure why. I think obviously they could have lost to Clemson, but but they figured out a way to win, right? And to me, that's what good teams do. That's what great teams do. They figure out a way to win. Tell me I'm crazy here. Did we miss? I don't say we missed a boat here, but we were like so a little bit high on like Duke and Louisville. We forgot that who the god kind of is here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've definitely been on that bandwagon too. I'm not gonna lie to you, right? Ever since we saw, I guess we had such high hopes for them. I think that's what it was, right? We really wanted this team to win, and we thought they were going to capitalize off their success and momentum last year. And then they came in, they did that for us, and they essentially dropped the big fat egg in our confidence ever since then. But my question is, the team so between FSU, or let me rephrase that. The question here is, how good is Duke, right? Is Duke good enough to beat FSU, which we'll talk about in a little bit here? And is Duke good enough to beat North Carolina, right? Because if we're using Duke as a litmus test here, besides the Duke game, neither FSU or North Carolina have a ranked opponent yet. And so is it so crazy? Is it so crazy to say North Carolina's are also those dudes? They're also undefeated in conference play.
100%, 100%. You just took the words right out of my mouth. That was the question I was going to ask you. I mean, I just wanted to
Sure.
correct my mental error. To me, it's got
Yeah.
to be FSU 1, and then I agree, maybe 2, but maybe 1B is got to be UNC. I think that win over Miami in a dominating fashion is a little bit of credit in my opinion. I know that Miami had that kind of weird fluky loss to Georgia Tech, but still, this is a really good team with a lot of great talent. I think that team has around a blue chip ratio of 50%. This is that team is no slouches. That is a lot of 4 and 5 star recruit talent. So I'm with you. I think what's going to happen is this going to be maybe one of the better ACC championships we've seen, right? It's going to be Florida State UNC, highly probable in my opinion, with Louisville kind of laying the egg against Pitt. And then Duke now with, their quarterback being out and them, losing to Notre Dame, like, can they actually get back? I think it's probably going to be UNC Florida State, which I'm here for. I think that's a really good game.
Sure.
And quite frankly, if either of those teams make it to the playoff, I think the playoff will be better for it.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I mean, we definitely need some new blood in there. And not that I'm a Clemson hater by any chance, but it's definitely good to see things get mixed up. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and I don't know offhand what UNC's blue chip ratio was, but just eyeball testing this, I mean, they haven't done anything to disappoint. I think UNC's biggest knock is, have they had enough big time moments, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I go back and look, looking at UNC's schedule, I don't think they've had the opportunity for an FSU game, right? I mean, their biggest game, I'm just kind of glancing here, is probably Miami, right? They had
Yeah.
Miami, Syracuse, Pitt, Minnesota, South Carolina, App State. So, they haven't had the chance to prove themselves. I think that's why I would give the edge to FSU as of right now. But I mean, come after this week, I'm really interested to see how this thing shakes out.
Yeah. And does UNC play Clemson for the rest of the season? Right? They do not, I
They
don't
play,
believe. Oh, they do.
no, they do. They played them second to last game of the season.
Okay. So that'll be a good kind of A equals B, B equals C kind of thing for us. But
Yeah.
I think we got a little bit too high on the Louisvilles and the Dukes, and we forgot, who's the king.
But didn't it feel good to dream though? Didn't it feel good to dream?
I mean, hey, like we had the model. The model had Louisville not necessarily being upset, but it did really like Pitt. It was good to see the model was right on that. Yeah, no, I'm with you. You brought it up. You said new blood. So let's talk about some other potential new bloods that are making their case and making a really strong one. Oregon, Washington. That game was one for the ages.
Ooh.
We called that out. I think even we made our preseason hype video. I believe Oregon, Washington was on that, if I'm not mistaken, as the top 10 matchups of the year. And I mean, that was such a good game. Oregon could have easily won that. I definitely question going for it on fourth. That was maybe a little bit too aggressive, but what are your thoughts on that game? I mean, both these teams look really, really good, and that game could have went either way.
Yeah, and I think for me that's reassuring as a Pac-12 fan, right? Because we get these two teams that are supposed to be good, and you have a good tight game like that really matches up to that one score game that we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
We said this is going to be a 3 or 7 point game. It'll be a one possession game through and through, and that's what we got. You flip that to like a SC Notre Dame game where again two really good teams are supposed to play each other and you have a blowout. That to me is a lot more concerning. So I think both Oregon and Washington are the real deal, and I'm really excited to see who comes out of the Pac-12 because for the first time I have confidence that whoever comes out of the Pac-12 will actually represent us pretty well, whether that's a playoff berth or another bowl game, right?
Yeah.
I'm excited for these teams. I think they are both legit. Michael Penix Jr. is absolutely that dude. No disrespect to Bo Nix. And I will say, I think it was Desmond Howard. I'll give you the shout out because I don't watch College Game Day a lot, but I did see that Desmond Howard, big Penix energy.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, you got it. There's so many better moments than that, Steve. You can get some better ones. Yeah, no, that was a good game. I think both of these quarterbacks. I mean, Penix now is definitely in the pole position to win the Heisman. I mean, honestly, both these teams can go undefeated. Now, the interesting thing here, and this leads me into kind of my next question for you, is both these teams still have to play USC. Is USC Alabama's little brother, and do they guarantee lose another game? Because I think one is the minimum that they lose.
Oh, 100%. 100. Now, I will say, we talked about this last week, right? We were saying, hey, listen, SC is absolutely in trouble against Notre Dame. I don't necessarily foresee them being in as much trouble against Utah, only because Utah's offense is not in the same stratosphere as Notre Dame's is. But 100%, USC is losing another game. I mean, they have Washington and Oregon and UCLA and to finish out back-to-back games to end the season. They might damn near go 0-3 in that stretch. I mean, we could be looking at a 4-loss team here.
Yeah, I mean, we called this. We bet and we have futures on Oregon and Washington win the Pac-12 because of the new rule, and they're going by winning percentage. And I think I thought then, and I think now even more so, there's a very high probability USC does not win the Pac. They don't even go to the Pac-12 championship game. It's interesting to me. It was so clear what they needed to do in the offseason. This is one of the best offenses in the nation. Their defense was their Achilles heel, and it was a glaring mistake with the transfer portal, with all the money that is going through that school. How they cannot get a good defense is beyond me. And I guess shout out to the University of Arizona, because the SC took like a couple of our cornerbacks and linebackers. Like, I guess they knew they were selling high, I guess. So shout out to them. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see how that all shapes up. But I think this is definitely heading towards a rematch, an Oregon-Washington Pac-12 championship game. And that'll be one for the ages again. And depending on who wins that, I agree with you. I think they do go to the playoff. Honestly, if they both make it out, no more losses, I think whoever wins the Pac-12 championship game goes to the playoff. You agree with that?
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll take it a step further. I think whoever wins the Pac-12 makes it to the potentially the championship game.
National. I don't think that's that crazy. I mean, both those teams have the offenses and the defenses to do it. They're very good on both sides, and it was good to see that game. Like, I was a little worried that maybe this could be lopsided one way or the other, and both these teams are good. So yeah, I agree. It's I mean, depending on how things go, if they both go undefeated, can we get an Oregon beat Washington and both teams make the playoffs? That'll be interesting. Now, Pac-12 that has had 0 teams in the playoffs and they end up with 2. I don't know. I don't think this is the year, but maybe if there is a year, this is the year, just because there's so much chaos.
Yeah, I mean, but you think about it though, right? I mean, to your point, you have. I mean, I would not want to be on the committee for that, right? I mean, you have two teams who are absolutely in dominant fashion. You can potentially have a 2-loss Bama team, and who knows what's going to happen to Georgia, right? So you have a big question mark there. Coming out the ACC, I mean, that's another one where, FSU looks to be doing this thing, but they can go on a little stretch here. Exactly, right? I mean, you can easily see if you have ACC, SEC, Big 10, and Big 12 all churning out 1-loss champions. I don't know.
You got to rank them then.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Well, luckily we got a couple weeks to go, and we'll gain more data. But I'm with you. I don't know that is that crazy. All right, heading to the Big Ten. All right, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I don't think I'm gonna be crazy, although I definitely want to defend this a little bit because I've been hearing some wild takes on TikTok. Michigan is the number 1 team in the Big Ten, like by far and away. And I keep hearing this argument. Yes, but Michigan has played nobody. When did playing and beating the shit out of Big Ten teams or conference games become playing nobody? This is the most wild thing to me ever. They're beating the shit out of Power 5 blue chip ratio 4- and 5-star recruits by 40+ points. Oh yeah, and by the way, Indiana was a team that Ohio State themselves struggled with. So I do not buy this argument. The data is measuring this. If you look at their ELO, they're still getting a good proportion or a good amount of ELO by beating these bad teams. I have to I don't want to die on this hill, but I have to defend this hill a little bit because I don't know where we lost the compass along the way, but you dominating in-division opponents is not beating up on quote-unquote bad talent. Tell me I'm crazy.
No, you're not crazy at all. That's 100% correct. I mean, you think about it, Michigan has not had a game be closer than 25 points this season, right? And that's really hard to do. Like, just because they make it look easy doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, hell, we just got done talking about, can Bama win the SEC or can Georgia win the SEC? They have both stumbled to very inferior teams, right? I mean, Bama had a 1-score, besides the loss they had to Texas, they had a 1-score win over USF, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Georgia's coming in and yeah, they're winning their games. But they're not looking nearly as dominant as Michigan has been this entire season. So no, I mean, listen, I get the whole like, it's college football and we want to see blowouts. We want to see teams put up 100 to assert their dominance, but that's absolutely ridiculous. Michigan is an elite team, and they are making waste of very good competition.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where that kind of narrative is coming from because I've never really heard that before. Okay, so Michigan obviously did their thing. Ohio State, 2 weeks in a row, kind of flipped the switch. They keep getting a little bit better. And the interesting thing about that game was a lot of injuries. They had a fair amount of players that weren't playing in that game. So that makes it a little bit more impressive. Now, I think this is a combination of maybe Ohio State getting a little bit better and a little bit more experience, but also playing a pretty weak Purdue team. This is a team that's really kind of lost everything they built in the last couple of years. But I mean, was that was impressive to me to see them continually take that step forward. Do you think the same of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was definitely hoping to see out of Ohio State. I mean, because it's not just that they were beating up on a Purdue team that used to be the ranked team slayer, right? It wasn't that long ago where the Purdue's were really tight, kind of taking down these giants, even though they weren't supposed to, right? But what you saw there offensively was so impressive because they were expecting to have a Mecca in that game, their receiver. They were expecting to have Travion Henderson come back in that game, one of their lead figures in the backfield. And to game plan with them and to not have them and to go out there as if they didn't miss a beat, that is concerning if you are other teams in the Big Ten, right?
Yeah,
if Ohio State gets them going, yeah. Because if Ohio State gets this going, watch out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it was interesting. Obviously, Penn State was not on a bye. They did their thing against UMass as well. So obviously, it's top heavy there in the Big Ten, but these teams all have to play each other. Now, there is some other teams that are interesting, like Wisconsin. In my mind, is a team that's really underperforming. They had a lot of hype coming in, and then the rest of the Big Ten is kind of, I don't know, say floundering, and maybe this is where people get this idea of like, oh, they're bad teams, but they're just not in the same stratosphere as Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, it looks like. And we're going to find out this week, getting the Penn State, Ohio State game. We're going to talk about that in the matchups. Any interesting teams in the Big Ten, in your opinion, other than these three?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things to that real quick. I feel so bad, and what's about Penn State as well, but you just want to talk about matchups and where things lie. Having Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State in the same division just seems like a crime.
Yeah.
That's I mean, these are literally teams that are leagues ahead of the rest of the competition, not just in the Big Ten, but the rest of the country. To have them pit against each other and only have one of them come out just seems criminal this year. So I don't know what else you can do for that besides maybe going to division records or winning percentage overall, but that just sucks. And I feel bad because Penn State's probably going to be the odd man out. Although who knows? Ohio State, that could be Ohio State. Now, I will say, speaking to the other side of that, right? So you have a really stacked, you have a really stacked Big Ten East, and then you have what I think is a relatively weaker Big Ten West. But call me crazy here, and I know this sounds wild. Iowa can mess around and win a Big Ten championship. Iowa could mess around and potentially go to the playoffs. I mean, hear me out, right?
Okay.
Because we talk about all these things. I know. Look at where Iowa's at the matchup map, right? They are
where they always are. Always are. Good defense, bad offense. They're always here.
Exactly, right? And yes, they got absolutely demolished by Penn State earlier this year, but they only have one loss, right? And again, their next closest competition is going to be Wisconsin, which, quite frankly, I think they can beat if they can mess around.
They just
go undefeated.
They just beat Wisconsin last week.
Right. Yeah. So if they can mess around and go undefeated for the rest of the season, right? Get to a Big Ten championship game and win that. Well, then what do you do? Right? Is that insane?
Yes. That is so insane. Because getting to the Big Ten championship. Okay, I'll give you that. I can give you that. Do you happen to have their schedule by chance? Who do they have to play? So they beat Wisconsin last week. Okay, but we were just talking. Wisconsin's kind of a disappointing team. Now I'll give Luke Fickell a year. This is his first year. This isn't his team yet. He's making do with what he has. So okay, I'll give you that. But who else do they have to play?
I'll give this schedule right now. Spoiler alert: nobody that is above the average line in this power rating.
Okay. All
So
right. All right.
you've got Minnesota next
Okay.
week
Row the
or
boat.
this week, I should say. You've got Northwestern, aka
Okay.
Dumpster Fire U.
Yeah. Okay. Dumpster fire. Okay. I'll give you that.
You've got Rutgers.
I
You've
don't
got
know. That team came back. Their backs were against the wall. They end up coming back and beating Michigan State. Okay. I don't know that that's like a for sure win, but okay.
so they've used up their one good luck win this year. All right. They've got Illinois.
Again, another team. They got a little life in them. They okay. All right.
Who we admittedly said we bought as low as you can possibly buy low, right?
And they won.
But shout out. Yeah, no, shout out.
Shout
And
out
then
the
they end
model.
the year, yeah, and they end against Nebraska.
A Nebraska team that's only going to get better, in my opinion. But okay, so this is where I don't think you're crazy. Can they make it to the Big Ten championship? I don't think that's crazy. But then the leap in probability that you need to go from that they actually can beat a Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, minimum those spreads are going to be 14.5 plus. I mean, this is going to be a bloodbath. Think I think 2 years ago, didn't Michigan play Iowa in the Big Ten championship? And I think they won by 30. I think it will be worse this year. You have no Caden McNamara. That's his name. What's his name? I don't know. Whatever their quarterback was, he tore his ACL. He's out for the season. So you're literally just gonna have to run the ball every play. I don't see it. I'll meet you halfway. If you want to get a bet down for Big Ten, okay, you could convince me. Playoff going to the playoff, you've lost me. I'll fill that bet. I'll fill that bet.
Now, listen, if you ask me, can Iowa beat any of those big three on any given week, I would give you a resounding hell no. But if you're saying, can Iowa on any given Saturday, one time, for their first Big Ten championship since 2004 and their first playoff appearance or a shot for a national championship since the 60s, upset a Goliath, it's probably still no, but there's a chance there. There's a chance. That's all I'm saying.
Those kids in the hospital are still going to be waving. I got nothing for you on that one. That one, I think that's a wild take. But hey, that's why we use the data, right? If the data, are showing that, come a couple of weeks, is we're going to get the benefit of the doubt that we get to keep measuring it. I think the biggest linchpin in that, to take it all serious, is the injured quarterback. Not having your kind of guy that you transferred in, I think really is going to change. I mean, this is an offense that was already struggling and it was not, being able to put up points. I think when you start playing these really offensively potent teams, how do you keep up? Like, your defense is good. Yeah, sure. But you can only stop them so much. I mean, we saw what a good defense and offense can look like in the Oregon-Washington team. That looks like swapping points. If you can't do the other side of that, which is score some, I think it's just out of hand. And we've seen this before. That would be kind of my analysis on that. But I think it's good. That's a good thought for trying to find value in looking. And obviously, if you think there's an edge, you get your money down and you prove me wrong. I'll eat crow pie all day. All right, that brings me into the last Power 5, Big 12. The two Goliaths were on buys. Oklahoma and Texas were on buys. Our darling Kansas ended up finally getting their first loss. That kind of sucks. Especially to a pretty inferior opponent, in my opinion, in Oklahoma State. We've talked about this before, but Oklahoma, Texas kind of shaping up to kind of come down to probably the Big 12 championship. But what's your thoughts and what's the kind of pulse in your opinion on that division conference?
Yeah, I mean, this is Oklahoma's to lose in my mind. But again, just like we talked about the Pac-12, I would hate to be on the selection committee if Texas beats Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, because then what do? Right? You have two really good teams who look like they're the real deal, and they're one against each other. So I think until proven otherwise, it's still Oklahoma. But I dare say Texas football might be back.
Yeah, I mean, so that's interesting. So what makes you give Oklahoma the nod here? I mean, I know they beat them the first time, but that was literally, figuratively and literally a shootout. Texas can win that game, or no?
Sure.
If obviously they both make it to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I mean Texas could, but they didn't, right? And then for me, like that's really what to me is what it's about. So can they get in a rematch and could Texas win? Yes, absolutely. But I think right now Oklahoma is really just seems to be firing on all cylinders. And I think we use this Texas game as a litmus test. And yes, Texas beat Bama, right?
Yeah.
But for me though, I don't give Texas didn't beat the Bama that's right next to Air Force on his power rank map, right? Texas beat Alabama team that didn't know what their identity was. They were making Milroe throw the ball down the field all game, where that's clearly not his strength, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the win's a win. I'm not trying to discredit them from that, but that win doesn't hold as much weight as Oklahoma beating Texas does. And I look through the rest of the schedule, I really don't see a lot of opportunity for either team to trip. So really, it's just about can they do it again? And who knows? I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. I'm not saying Oklahoma's a different league than Texas, but until proven otherwise, they're the better team.
Okay,
in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I have a future for Oklahoma, so I love to hear it. I think that obviously that game will be close. The spread will be close. But yeah, that's an interesting take. I guess I'm still, I guess, high on Texas. I think the winner of that though definitely goes to the playoff. And I think it's another scenario that we keep hitting on over and over. If there's 2 1-loss teams, this is going to get really, really interesting. Sucks that this year is not the 12 game, because this is the year for it, because there's just so much. So much. Like the top 25 is all very, very similar. There isn't, the top 5 aren't very different than the rest, and it would be really cool to see them all play each other. All right, well, that's kind of the rundown of the landscape. Anything we didn't talk about, Steve, that you wanted to get in?
I haven't checked the score yet, but Sam Houston State, just want to discredit this. I want to clear my name here. I'm not a Sam Houston State fanboy. All right. I bet on them one time after they kept a close Air Force game. They've disappointed me every game, every time since. And I think they're playing FIU tonight. And of course they are losing FIU, who were 5.5 point dogs. So I just want to clear my name. That's all.
Okay. So it's Sam Houston, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Welcome to the FBS. I think this is their first year, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Well, quick recap for the model last week. Well, unfortunately, coming off a 9-0 week, we went 7-8, had a losing week. Interesting here. We definitely bet on some bottom feeders, right? We had Kent State, we had Nevada, we had New Mexico, all teams that are definitely lower in the power ratings. And, Kent State, very interesting. The very first play of this game, Steve, quite literally, they kick an onside kick and it gets returned for a touchdown. I mean, you can't literally start the game any worse, but I got to give credit where credit is due. Kent State was trying to win that game. So, hey, you want to be on, we're on the wrong side of the bet. But we even saw closing line value in that game. But yeah, a lot of these games were there. I mean, UAB tied it got it into 4 within the fourth. And then they blew it. I mean, a lot of these teams held in there until they just didn't. And that's the unfortunate side about betting some of these bottom feeder teams. They can collapse, and they can collapse fast. That's why they're a bottom feeder team. But I think overall, right, we're still profitable for the season. I think we're somewhere right around 44 or 54%. And we've always been transparent, right? You're gonna you go 9-0. Okay, well now you go 7-8. Like, you're always really looking for that 55-ish% edge. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But in the aggregate, you still should come out ahead over the season. Any of these were your favorite? The Illinois game was really interesting. That was the model kind of saw that all the way.
Yeah, no, I mean that was great. I definitely love the Ohio State game. That was kind of a smooth sailing there. And then I will say, I think we had this philosophical debate a few years ago when we were in Austin about, would you rather, have a team keep into it all the way and win in the last play? Would you rather coast the entire time? You're like, no, dude, I'd rather coast that bet. I don't want the drama. And on the flip side here, we had some teams like Nevada and New Mexico where they just coasted losing the entire time. It was never really close. So you didn't have to worry about, oh man, will they, won't they? You can kind of write that one off and mentally move on. But yeah, listen, 7-8 is still not obviously it's a losing week, or we don't want to have a bunch of those in a row or at all in general. But that is still, when you're betting on this wide variety of teams. If you would have given me this slate and said, hey, pick winners, 1-14, maybe 2-13 on a good day. Right? I have no idea what I'm doing over here.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is the bounce back, but we will move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all. And I think, this is right in line with regular variance. This is even an extreme variance.
Yeah.
And a lot of, we were 1 or 2. I mean, this is really the swing of 2 games and you're profitable, right? Which isn't that crazy. So we bounce back, but this is what it looks like to be professional, right? This is finding edges. We saw CLV on every single one of these games, except I believe one, which was UAB, and it showed that team got dominated kind of every which way. But that's really the signal you want to see from the market, that you're seeing CLV. We're seeing that. And, our overall win rate is reflecting that, but any individual week can look a little bit different than that. Okay. We're going to hop into the top 25 matchups. The screen may look a little bit different than it usually does. Shout out to Unabated. You see that it is powered by Unabated down there. Also, shout out Sam Houston. They just scored. So now it is 17-17. So maybe it's time to start betting on them, Steve. But anyways, the Unabated odd screen, and really what we're going to be incorporating from here on out is some of the tools that Unabated provides. And one of those is the Unabated odd screen. The cool thing about the Unabated odd screen, and we can't even show all of it because it's so vast with information, but the cool thing it has, and you're seeing it here on the screen, is what the spread is at currently at the market makers. And then if you were to click those numbers, it'll show you the line history at the market making books. So you can see where steam is coming from. You can even see what's happening at a market maker, and then go to the retail books. If you scroll over, you'll see a whole other list of the FanDuels and the DraftKings of the world. You can find sleepy books that haven't moved the line yet. You can find, arbitrage things. You can see that it's also quantifying the hold. So you can see what market you're betting into, try to find low hold or zero hold markets. So you can kind of, even if you're just guessing into those markets, you can come out ahead, or at least not break. You'll break even over time. So shout out to Unabated. Thank you to them so much for being our partners. And you can go sign up using our code BTB. You will get 5 days free. We highly recommend you go use that. Check it out. See if it's something that you can use to make you a better bettor. All right, Steve. We're starting out with USC, Utah. We talked about them. We've damn near talked about them every week. They're always in the top, the kind of matchups. We thought we knew that they were going to struggle against Notre Dame because this was their real biggest competition. Okay, they have a bit of a different competition this week in Utah. This opened at 5. You can see that the market has moved this to 7. So they're looking for SC to bounce back a little bit. But I want to kind of get your thoughts here. I know you definitely were adamant SC is going to struggle against Notre Dame. Okay, you were right. We give you your flowers here. Do you still feel this going into this week, or is it a whole different ballgame with a whole different team?
Yeah, I mean, I think SC is still going to struggle, but I don't know that they lose this game, right? I think this -5 is there for a reason, and I think the direction of the 7, or actually -8.5, you can find is the right direction there. But here's my issue. Utah does not have the offense that Notre Dame did, right? You look at their offensive EPA per play, they're sitting there pretty much 0.09. Notre Dame was about 0.38, right? That's a big, significant difference between the two.
Oh, yeah.
Utah's defense has always been their sort of calling card with this. Do I think Caleb Williams struggled? Yes, absolutely. But I don't know that Utah has the offense to take advantage of SC's poor defense compared to what Caleb Williams should be able to do against a still pretty stiff defense. So, I think SC wins this game, but I think we've seen the peak of SC football. Now, I will say, though, looking at this here, if we're getting above a 7-point spread, I'm going to seriously start looking at this, and I may have to put some money down on Utah if that doesn't get bought up too quickly. I imagine 7 will probably be the number, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you can see at Pinnacle there, you're getting plus 100. I mean, that may be on the move to 7.5, but I agree, 7.5, 8 become a very different bet than the current 7. I don't know. I mean, there's for the angle guys out there, and I'm kind of an angle hater, but I'll dabble here. You have the revenge spot here for Caleb Williams, right? The Utah, and I don't know why I'm censoring. Fuck Utah on his fingernails, and to be honest, he fucked Utah up until he got injured in that game. I think we kind of look back at that game a little bit different than the reality. They were winning by 14 plus. He pulled a hammy or a quad or something like that. He was not mobile at all. And that is where the implode started. And, they eked out a win. Utah did. So I don't know, a little bit of revenge ball here, and I assume, or we will assume that he stays healthy in this game. I could see them, giving a little bit of extra effort. I think your analysis is spot on. This is not the offense that can exploit the USC defense. This is not a potent offense. In fact, I would rather take a San Jose State's offense over a Utah, and we saw. That was not a close game, but they were able to cover. I don't know that that's the same thing here. And I think this is maybe shaping up, I don't say a blowout, but I can easily see them, and by them, SC covering the 1 point or one possession spread here. It's not a game for me that I'm betting either way. But I think there's just too much undue business here for SC to stumble again. I mean, they got the stumble, they got the loss out. This is the time to kind of take it out. Now, more angles to come, I guess. You have the Ohio, or you have the Oregon, you have the Washington games coming up, the quote unquote look ahead spot. I think they're not looking past Utah here. I think they really want to make a point to beat them. And I think you're spot on. The offense here for Utah just is not, it's not the same team it was last year. Like, this is not a team that can just put up a bunch of points at whim, right? They're going to try to stop you. And I think a good luck trying to stop this offense for them. So any play here, are you playing this game? Or are you going to wait, maybe catch a Utah 7.5, 8?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to wait for. If that doesn't get bought up so quickly, I'm going to dabble here. And you're right. I mean, listen, we and I said it myself, right? Like, this is not the offense that Notre Dame is. This is the offense that is, quite frankly, Utah's weak point. I just don't know. Looking at the defensive success rates over here, looking at Utah's defensive success. Words are hard today, man. Looking at Utah's defensive success rate on a pass, right, on passing downs, standard or obvious passing downs, 14.73%. I think the book's out on Caleb Williams. And I'm not saying that he's going to do nothing the rest of the year. I'm not saying that. But I do think you have a blueprint on what to do to try to bottle him up. And if Utah can ground and pound and wear down that SC defense, I don't see this being a shootout. I see it being a relatively low-scoring game that Utah can hang around 7 points with. But again, I do believe this is a SC. SC will win this game, but I'm looking for more than one possession.
Yeah, and does this ring bells for you? When didn't Utah play Oregon State? And I was kind of making the case for good defense. I think we kind of saw that may not work for this Utah team, and the offense is, if it's potent enough, just for whatever reason, just can't be stopped. And I think it comes down to the fact that Utah just doesn't have the offense that they usually have, that kind of shootout. But they win a couple of drives, like, is the difference. Like, I think that's what it comes down to for me. So, all right, yeah, no play for me, but yeah.
Can I give you one more angle? Right?
Yeah, give it to me, baby.
So if Caleb Williams, this is the revenge game, part 2 of Caleb Williams with the fingernails saying "fuck you." If Utah's defense comes out and in solidarity go fuck CALEB, does that give them the S? And this is a revenge the revenge. Is this fingernail game? Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this fingernail gate? Like, hey, look, okay, you'll hear it here first, and you'll hold me accountable to this.
Sure.
If Utah comes out and the whole team has their nails painted "fuck Caleb," I am hammering Utah. If you can get like 120-year-old men that are the most insecure about stuff like that to paint their fingernails, these guys are tuned up. They are brainwashed. They are ready to kill. So I will do it. You hold me accountable. I'm looking for it. I'm hoping for it. Okay, I like that angle. Heading into the next matchup, and this is probably going to be the best one of the weekend, in my opinion. We have Ohio State, Penn State. Both these teams are stacked. You can see a blue chip ratio of 95% for Ohio State, 60% for Penn State, which these are two of the highest in the country. In fact, that 95 is the highest in the country for Ohio State. But these teams are evenly matched. This opened at 5. This is currently sitting at 5. Or no, I'm sorry. This opened at 4. This is currently sitting at 5. The model put the number at 5. Steve, tell me if you're feeling one way or the other on this. I think this is going to be similar to last week, Oregon, Washington. This, I think, is going to be a really good matchup, and I don't think Ohio State has the kind of talent. They have the talent. I don't know if they have the team to blow out the Penn State like they usually do.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I don't think that, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think they're gonna have the talent to blow them out. Now, I will say this. I think Ohio State at its healthiest, full throttle, is a team that handles Penn State. I
Okay.
don't know if we're going to see that this Saturday. Now, Ryan Day did say he's hopeful to getting Trevion Henderson back, to getting Emeka Egbuka back today or
Of
this
course.
week. And so, if they have a full receiving core and a full running back core and all that talent available to them from that blue chip ratio, then yeah, for sure. But without that, this is a Penn State team who I admittedly have not been given credit to. And this
Yeah.
is going to be that classic, immovable object versus unstoppable force, right? You're looking at Penn State's defense. We talk about how hard it is to have a negative defensive EPA per play in college. And Ohio State's pretty close, but you have that there. And then you have offensively, clearly Ohio State is in a different league, right? So I just this is in Ohio State in Columbus.
This is at Ohio State, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So, with that being said, I do like Ohio State. I'm gonna be honest, I don't feel comfortable. I would feel way more comfortable with a 2.5, but clearly the market is feeling something here. With the line moving the way it is. So I mean,
Yeah.
sorry to waffle on you, but yeah, I don't know,
No, no,
man. This is a
no,
good
no.
game.
Yeah, no waffle here. One thing I really want to point out here, and this is almost the shoe on the other foot. Ohio State versus Michigan. Michigan won that game last year against Ohio State purely based off explosive plays. If you look at
Sure.
all of their points in offense, I think it came off of like 5 plays total, which is insane. I really want to bring notice this is a good per play EPA team for Penn State, but look at that defensive explosive rate. This is a
Mm,
team that gives up explosives and at a high rate. And what is that not good for? This is not a good matchup for a good wide receiving core Ohio State that potentially can threaten those explosive plays. I would not be surprised if that's what it comes down to. And yes, you're seeing out of 5, and this is where I'm going to detach from the model analytics world. But this is potentially in my mind where you can see a high variance outcome where Ohio State wins by 14, even though the market
mhm.
closes at 6 or something because of explosive plays. Now, the problem with explosive plays is they're not very predictable. The signal is not very strong. So this is me cherry picking a stat that to me jumps out of the page, but very much to me can translate to a high variance game. What is a high variance game for this specific stat? I think is Ohio State potentially going off. Now, that being said, on a per play basis, which is much more stable, Penn State's really, really good on defense. So what I could say can be completely wrong, and Penn State could very much even win this game. But it's something I would keep an eye out for. If and I'll hold myself accountable. You see a big touchdown in the first couple of plays for Ohio State, I think that's a signal that they know this and that's their game plan. And it's probably going to be a lot of attempts for explosive plays. And can Penn State kind of figure it out? I would probably say no. So it's just something to keep an eye out for. So no official plays, but I'm definitely looking to bet this live, especially if I'm seeing right out of the bat them go for the jugular. I feel like that's going to be what it's going to be like all day. Any last thoughts on this game?
Yeah, see, that's interesting because I kind of take the opposite approach. If Ohio
Okay.
State gets out to a quick lead, I'm almost trying to live bet the inflated spread for Penn State to come back and cover.
Okay.
To your point, on a per play basis, they are really good, and you're absolutely right. That
Yes.
explosive rate is going to be potentially the Achilles heel for this team. But I guess for me, I just question how often, and I know the answer is 4.48%, but really how often in this game, right? Will Ohio State be able to get away with that
Yeah.
with Penn State's with schemes and maybe again they're playing teams to the best of their ability, right? But this is a get up game, right?
Yeah.
This is a statement game for Penn State. So I'm almost on the opposite end of saying I kind of hope Ohio State does score early, maybe get
You can get some extra
13 and a
points.
half. No, yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is completely valid because also, in that take there was that explosives aren't a predictive signal. So yes, they get one big, doesn't mean they will get more. It does not mean that at all. And you're completely right there. And I think your approach and your analysis on that is definitely the more stable of the things. I think if you're trying to take a big swing, we got some psychos that follow us. They want to like get down like a plus, Ohio State wins by 17 or something. I think that's the kind of avenue game that you're going to be looking for. And I think mostly it's just for me looking at is that the game plan Ohio State's going for? Like, they know this is an issue and they're trying to exploit it. Now, it doesn't mean that they'll actually have success, though. And having success on one play, literally, right? And that's what explosive is one play, doesn't mean they'll have more to come. So, no, I think you're not. I totally agree with what your analysis is there. Okay, heading in to the ACC, we talked a little bit about both these teams. Florida State versus Duke. This opened at 14.5, looks to be sitting at 14.5. From what I tried to do a little bit of homework, the smaller reporting in Durham, Raleigh basically say Duke's quarterback, he's out. The bigger networks, however, have much more clickbaity titles. Will he be out? Won't he be out? So I'm going to go with the kind of go to the source. So I forget the Duke quarterback's name, but it looks like he will be out for this game. He won't play. I believe he has a high ankle sprain that he suffered at the end of that Duke game. We talked about Florida State here, where at least in my book, coming clean, coming back. This is the king right now, the ACC, and I think they deserve it. They've beaten every other big team that they've gone up against, including LSU and Clemson. I know this says it's negative EV. I don't know if I will bet it, but I have to say I have to like this spot here for Florida State because they've shown me they can get up for these big games.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right here. And, I think the bigger issue too is, or not the bigger issue, but I think the issue here as well is, even if Riley Leonard does play, if he has this high ankle sprain that we think it is, how mobile is he going to be? How effective is he going to be, right? Is it better to have a second string quarterback to the full of their, potential ability, or a severely hampered first string quarterback? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's something you have to think about because you look at this team here. And Florida State defensively is no slouch, right? But with that being said, I mean, relative to where Duke is at, right? So with that being said, this is a team where we've seen Florida State rise to the occasion, right? And I really don't have any reason to doubt them here, especially if you don't have your QB1. So I'm with you. I don't like the 14.5. I don't like that. I would much rather have 13.5, obviously. This is a 3-possession game. I don't know, but I would feel pretty damn comfortable at 2 possessions. So for me right now, it's a no bet, but I would be very curious to see how that turns out.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, except for I just think Duke losing its quarterback is the air out of the balloon. Like they had so much momentum, and even though they lost to Notre Dame, like I think the bigger thing there was the loss of the quarterback, and I think that's the only thing that keeps them in this game. I mean, they were able to beat. I mean, I guess Duke was competitive against Clemson, but if we really think about that, Clemson also was competitive against themselves. They gave up 3 fumbles in the red zone. They missed multiple field goals in the red zone. I don't know that Florida State does that here. And if we see any kind of efficiency from them, especially in the red zone and able to kind of close those drives, I could easily see Florida State winning by 3, 21 points, 3 or even 17, right? I don't think that that's crazy, given that this offense is obviously not going to be able to play at the same level.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong there. I hear you.
But on paper, these teams match up really well. If the quarterback is not out, this spread is not 14, in my opinion.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, the blue chip ratio, I think, is interesting and an interesting angle, and I think I'd put more into it. But we saw what a Duke team could do to a Notre Dame team that has a blue chip ratio of like 80. So whatever's going on in Duke as far as their recruits, like, maybe they're not 4 and 5 stars, but they got, I guess if you get a high enough score on your SAT, it does something to you, as apparently. All right. We've kind of saved the best for last, and this will be a double whammy because this, as you can see, 2% or better is a model pick, baby. Go Vols. We are the model has Tennessee all day. We were able to get this at 9.5, maybe 9. I think it was just 9. You can see where the market has this now. This is currently moved to 7.5 at Pinnacle and is sitting at 8 and 8.5 at Circa and Bookmaker, respectively. We talked about Alabama potentially losing another game. I'm not necessarily calling my shot here, but if the market keeps pushing this number lower, especially through the 7, the market is also communicating that they think Alabama could lose this game. But what do you say, Steve? I mean, obviously got the model, the market, both agree. Tennessee is kind of the play for right now, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game where I think I don't know what to think, right? Because
Okay.
I've sit here and I've bet against Alabama every week since Texas, and I has been wrong every week since Texas. And I think this is a team that truly is getting better, but I don't know that they are 9 points better than Tennessee. And I have my own doubts about Tennessee's play. You know, are they how legit are they really? But this is a game I could see being more of, I don't call it a shootout per se. This is not a very sexy offensive teams on either side, but I could see this being a game where Tennessee finally kind of gets right. Bama really does struggle, and there's no late game heroics like we saw, in the Arkansas game. So I say that, but I've been this confident for the last like 4 weeks, and I've been wrong. So I don't know what to think.
Well, I mean, Alabama didn't cover last week. They only ended up winning by 4, so that
Hmm.
would have been a win there.
That's true.
Yeah, I just like this is just not the off. But like to be honest, both of these teams offensively have taken steps back. But
Mhm.
Tennessee currently is still, I guess technically, yeah, on a per play basis, is more efficient. And I'm not ready to. I'm low on Alabama. I'm going to believe who this team is, and it's a highly talented clusterfuck. That's basically what I think Alabama is. I think, of course, they have raw talent that is really great. I think their defense is really good, but I think all of that is true from Tennessee, and I think 9 is way too many. I won't be surprised if this closes right at 7 or 6.5, which is basically saying a 1 touchdown game. I think that's what this feels like to me. I'll find it hard to believe that an Alabama team has more success than they did about around a median Arkansas team. I think Tennessee is better and has more talent. So I'm not surprised that the model likes this year. Now, that being said, this is a far cry from what it was last year. This is probably one of the best games last year. I don't know if it's going to be as pretty. No matter what happens, it would be quite interesting to see if the Burnt Orange takes Alabama down twice in 2 seasons at home. That would be pretty
Yeah.
wild because this is in Bama. But I don't know. I mean, obviously the model has this. We took it at 9. The market's agreed. To me, it's as simple as that. I'm not surprised though that it likes Tennessee in this spot. Because they're just slightly better, and that kind of talent from Alabama and the brand name just inflates their number a bit too much.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that, just and not like the actual, give me a number, but do we think the model is leaning towards? I mean, we're taking Tennessee at, we took out the +9 here, but do you think this would be a one possession game prediction from the model had it not been for this blue chip ratio? That, I mean, quite frankly, I think it's giving Bama more credit than it deserves.
You know what? I think there's a couple things at play here, right? There's an effect going on with the blue chip ratio, but one of the other effects here is our priors. Who were these teams last year?
Mm, sure.
I mean, the thing is, for both these teams, the priors are wrong. There's no great way to handle that, in my opinion, because you really don't know how wrong. And so your best bet is just use the data we have and the data we did have, and let's just blend those together, right? And that's fundamentally what we're doing. Because to say, okay, well, this team isn't that team. Well, what does that mean? Are they half the team? They a quarter of the team?
Sure.
They 62.4% of the team. You have no idea. But if you think back to last year, the Tennessee offense was one of the most potent. Now, that being said, Alabama's team was really potent on offense as well. So I'm not actually that uncomfortable. Now, this doesn't mean that Tennessee is for sure going to win. You can see the edge is about 3%. Because I think both of these teams have both gotten worse offensively. So I think that it's kind of proportionate in that way. But honestly, I think it's a little bit of that. And yeah, I think it's a little bit of the blue chip ratio, but you got to remember we have something like 48 variables in the model. Like the weight of any one thing isn't so crazy. Like this isn't like there isn't one variable in that model that's like driving the whole thing, right? It is a kind of a
Sure.
holistic approach of who these teams are this season based off the data we have and who they were last season, right? Through the data you have there. So I think that's mostly where you get. So we've taken Tennessee +9, and we'll see how this thing kind of closes. I think it's headed towards 7. I wouldn't be surprised if it closed 7, 7.5. And let's just hope that the Vols do their thing in Bryant Denny. All right, Steve, we're headed in to the model picks. You have anything left on this game?
No.
All right.
Good old Rocky Top.
Here we go. Woo! All right. Well, we got a number of interesting ones here. I have to say, this is one of the bigger brand names. It feels like cards. We have
Mhm.
teams like Oklahoma, LSU, Michigan, Auburn, Cincinnati, Tennessee, Mississippi State. Yeah, we're betting on a lot of SEC games, and then a couple smaller schools. Akron. Akron's been cashing tickets for us. We bet on them twice.
Yes.
We're 2 for 2. Let's see if we can make it 3 for 3 with Akron. But you can see it's got a lot of value in that game. Eastern Michigan, and this one is interesting. Mississippi State, Tennessee. We talked about. Cincinnati has moved in our direction. That's now moved to 2.5. Auburn is staying real tight there at 6.5. Michigan is now sitting at 24. We got that number at 23.5. Very key to get that at 23.5. Oklahoma, I believe we got an 18.5. Still 18s, 18.5s in the market. And then LSU, I believe we got 29.5. All right, Steve. What are you feeling? What are you hating? What makes you feel nervous? What makes you feel smart?
I love the Oklahoma. We actually got that at 18 even. So I love
did?
that.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. I love the Michigan 23.5. I think that's like you said, it's a huge hook in our direction. This Michigan team just looks dominant. And this in-state, and I can't even call it a rivalry. This in-state game it's been pretty one-sided for the most part. I want to give a shout out though, because I know it's not on here because the game's already been played, but Jack State. We were on Jack State +8, and they won outright. So
did they? Okay.
Loving that. Yeah. I will say I'm a little nervous about Eastern Michigan only because I don't know anything about Eastern Michigan other than we bet on and against them, and I feel like, and I could be wrong, I feel like we've always been wrong. I don't know what.
Well, the interesting thing is we bet on them and against them. Yeah, is that what you? And we've always been wrong. Yeah. No, 100%. You're not wrong at all. When we bet against them, we've lost, and when we I don't know that we've bet on them yet. That's the one thing I don't know.
Okay, yeah,
we're about to find out.
That info. Yeah. So anytime I see that school name, it just scares the shit out of me. But no, other than that, I mean, I do, like I said, I really feel good about. I love Michigan, Oklahoma. I'm most excited to see Tennessee. And I feel smart with Akron because that's not a game I would ever touch.
Yeah.
They've been cashing tickets. How about you?
Yeah, they've been cashing tickets. Man, I want to go so ignorant on that Oklahoma. I keep going to the well every time with Oklahoma, and they just pay. They pay. And I want to go so ignorant because the raw model number puts us as exactly at 21. Exactly at 21. And I think that is so perfect. What is the most probable outcome of an 8, for you to cover an 18-point spread? It's 21. I mean,
right.
And I want to believe that so bad. And we'll see. I've been really good, and we talk a lot about talk about it a lot. Bankroll management is key, but we have not really scaled. Personally, I've not scaled a lot of any of my bets here. I take them very religiously for how they are, but at this point in the season, the model starts to really ramp up because it has so much more data than we did have. Right, we're more than halfway through the season now. So the problem with this logic though is then I'm applying my dumb brain to a really intelligent model, right? Like you're blending like the degenerate behavior and then the super analytical behavior. It doesn't necessarily always go well. But I have to tell you, I love that bet. I love it. Whether it wins or loses. Michigan, I'm all day with you. Why? This is a year removed from the huge whole like Michigan swinging helmets and like all these people got suspended. I can imagine if you're a Michigan fan, you are pissed the fuck off. Like they were swinging helmets on people. Like that's pretty gnarly. Even though you whooped on them, like you gotta swing your own metaphorical helmet back here to kind of stick it to them. In my opinion. Cincinnati makes me really nervous. And I agree. Eastern Michigan, these smaller schools that are kind of in the quadrant of woe. Whew, betting on them is a stressful proposition. Now the good news is you can't always find the game, so sometimes you can't even watch them. And then I'm really curious to the Tennessee, Alabama. Who is Alabama? If Alabama is going to win a national championship, they need to beat Tennessee here, and I think they got to cover here. FBS shouldn't take that into account, but I think I think it does, to be honest, because it's this kind of quality win type of logic. So we'll see what ends up happening there. So I'm curious. And then the other thing is, can we get an Auburn team that played Georgia? If we can get the same Auburn team that played Georgia tough, I think that could be a really, really easy cover. But do we see Ole Miss try to figure out how to, navigate this? Because they seem like they started hot and they've cooled down a little bit in the last couple of weeks. So I'm really curious. But and then I guess last, LSU Army. I mean, like the Tigers got to do the troops bad, I guess here. Like, they're calling for 30 point spread here. I mean, LSU is running out of opportunity, and they don't have too many wins left to make their case. And do they have 2 losses or just 1? They lost to Florida State.
FSU.
But I think they lost again, didn't they? Yeah, they lost to Ole Miss.
No, you're right. Ole Miss, yeah, 55-49. You're right.
Yeah. So if there is going to be because if Alabama loses, then they'll have 2 losses. So they have to, in my opinion, really, 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 really they have to win and dominate these teams. So we'll see. I don't know. They have the talent. They should have the talent to do it. But we'll see if they can actually put it together. I don't know. Overall, I'm excited. Yeah. I'm nervous and excited. But I like that there's more, should we say, brand name teams here. The model seems to do better when it's in the middle to the top at calling it shots. And I think that's a variance thing. I don't think that the model is wrong when it picks these bottom feeders. I think what a model can't do, though, if there's turmoil, how do you quantify that? How do you quantify that? No, this team is literally imploding. It doesn't know that, right? It just thinks, oh, okay, well, based off this talent, this team should, or based off these statistics, these teams should be better than that, or they should do better than that. But, that's, we're talking about kids at the end of the day, right?
Right. Yeah, I will say the one thing that always scares me about the Army game is the time of possession.
Yeah.
Right? The clock. And then obviously this year with the new rules of the clock not stopping on first downs outside of the last 2 minutes of the first and fourth quarter. That always scares me with these large spreads. But to be fair, we saw, I think it was Wake Forest last year put up 70 on the Army. So, now Army put up 56. So that wouldn't be like a cover, but there were a lot of points in that game. So I'm curious to see how that game works out, because you're right. Yeah. LSU has all the incentive in the world to beat up on an Army team here.
Yeah, and you set me up perfectly. So all day when we go live, we talk to all the people out there that follow us and listen to us, and I always hear the same thing: LSU's defense is so bad. LSU's defense so bad, and you're right. On an offensive or on a defensive per play basis, LSU's defense is bad. But remember, this is a team that is playing super, super, super talented teams in the SEC, or, in the case of Florida State, the ACC. So when we put it into the power rating, all I hear is, well, Florida State should be so much higher. They should be so much higher. Or I'm sorry, LSU should be so much higher, so much higher. You're hearing it here first. This is what it's going to look like for a bad LSU defense to go up against a very, very low talented team in Army. I bet you it does not look like they have a bad defense. Now, I will eat my crow pie next week if that's the way it goes. But I think this is a perfect game to showcase what it looks like when these teams that are highly talented, that have bad defenses, go up against truly, truly bad defenses. So that's kind of my last crazy take or diatribe. But all right, Steve, anything else you like this week 8?
Nothing more than you talking your shit, man. Talk that talk. Let the people know.
I'm just saying. This is like, you got to contextualize the data when we're talking about a power rating, right? This is a relative scale, so you got to inflate the LSU number because they're better than Temple, they're better than Army, and we're gonna see that this week, in my opinion, and in the model's opinion. So hey, we'll see. The good thing about this stuff is it'll all work itself out, and we'll see next week who's right. All right, Steve. So if you got nothing else, no other picks, I got nothing else. Just rolling with the model this week. Nothing really stands out. We talked a little bit about maybe some Penn State angles. I like what you said. I think that those both are kind of ways to play that game if you're looking to get some action in that game from a live standpoint. That is it for us. We are headed into week 8. We are excited to see what the model has to offer, see if we can be profitable again. Can we get that elusive 9-0 weekend? I don't know. Highly doubt it. But hey, once you hit that high once, you're just trying to get it again. So maybe the model can come through. But all I want to say is thank you guys so much for being here. I'm Seth. This is Steve. We are Bully the Board. Kevin will be back next week. And again, if you can like and subscribe, it helps us tremendously. Without further ado, thank you guys, and you have a wonderful week. Let's bully the board.